For telehealth, it's just clear that we're not going to connect rural communities to appropriate healthcare services effectively without broadband. It is pretty well accepted that what changed rural America was electricity. And I often tell the story of a gentleman who stood up in a Tennessee church one night and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something. The greatest thing on earth is to have the love of God in your heart. And the next greatest thing is to have electricity in your house." That's how important electricity was to rural America 80 years ago. And that is just as important in this century as it was in the past. But I always tell people, in the 21st century, it's broadband. What will connect communities today is high-speed, affordable broadband.
Telehealth, in order for telehealth to work in the family home or even out remotely when you're in the Walmart parking lot or somewhere like that, you need good quality connectivity to be able to have a good conversation with your doctor. And your doctor's not going to render a diagnosis if they can't hear your voice clearly, they can't see your face.
Hey, how you doing, Dr. Mack?
Good. What's going on today?
Having good quality connectivity is really important. So connectivity can come to you in both cellular on your cell phone, but it can also come to you in your family home with wired residential internet. And that's the thing we're really trying to do, is get that wired residential capability into as many homes as possible. The Federal Communications Commission defines broadband as 25 megabits per second download speed, 3 megabits per second upload speed. So we have very precise maps done, so we know at a census block level who has service and who doesn't. And then that's our job, is to close the holes. In the state of South Carolina, there's roughly 170,000 homes that do not have connection to the internet right now. And it won't surprise you that that's predominantly in our rural areas.
So when you talk about broadband is essentially another word for high-speed internet. There's a number of different ways to deliver that. What we're doing here today is fiber to the home solutions. That's kind of the gold standard when it comes to high-speed internet. So the biggest challenge with rural broadband expansion is the availability of funds. It's infrastructure. It's not just us flipping a switch and deciding to turn the internet on. It's very capital intensive.
It's so difficult to fix the internet in rural communities because it's expensive. It's roughly $40,000 a mile to put 1 mile of fiber underground. It's about $28,000 a mile to put 1 mile of fiber on a telephone pole. So when you do the math in a sparsely populated area, it gets really expensive really fast. So to go 5 miles to reach 5 or 6 homes, that's a very expensive investment when the return is in the form of a monthly payment that might be $50 to $100 a month. So the economics will never make sense if you're a private business. That's where the federal and state subsidy comes in, because it changes the calculus and it allows infrastructure to get built.
When the pandemic hit, that really accelerated the need for funding, accelerated the need for internet for folks at home, for telehealth, for working from home. So that just really put us into full gear into securing those funds and getting this work in place.
I think if you were to take all of the funding streams that have already been put into law, CARES Act being one of them, the so-called bipartisan infrastructure plan being another, or even parts of the American Rescue Plan, where you find another bucket of money. And then there's another bucket of money in the FCC. If you look at all of those buckets, it comes somewhere in the neighborhood between $500 and $600 million for South Carolina alone. And all the experts tell me that that ought to allow South Carolina to build out 100% within 4 to 5 years. I think it's true We can do that, and we ought to move forthwith to do it.
We have a rare moment in time. This is actually historical in perspective. The only other time in U.S. history when this has occurred is when we pushed electricity into rural America. So that happened in 1935 when Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Rural Electrification Act. And we're at that same moment in history right now where it's our generation's chance to lift up the economy and do some special things. So getting internet into rural homes will have the same effect that electricity did. When we look back to that time, electricity enabled electric pumps to work, and we actually got fresh water at the same time. Kind of similar thing is happening with internet, where we are extending internet, but that becomes the platform for complete economic development and quality of life change all over the state.